Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Barry Kostrinsky. This is ATOA, Artist Talk on Art. Artist Talk on Art is a 501c3. This is our 83rd virtual open studio that we do every Monday at 6 o'clock. ATOA, a 501c3, has been holding in-person talks in the Lower West Side of New York City since 1975. This has been our response to the COVID crisis that's been going on. Important news, the board has decided to postpone in-person talks until the earliest April. So we will be continuing with the Zoom format into 2022. And then going forward, it will be a Zoom format as well, but hopefully starting April, the first of the month will be live talks at 12 West 12th Street, the First Presbyterian Church, where we hold our talks. Also coming in 2022, we have a new start time. We're going to be starting at 7 p.m. All this is going to be on our website. And indeed, if you go on the calendar, you can see the talks that are coming. And we have a very exciting program that's going to finish the year. And shortly, probably in a week or so, you'll see postings for January, February, and March for the talks that are to come. And again, they will be very exciting as well. I want to thank everybody for coming. Your time is the most valuable commitment you can offer. We have a very exciting presentation, Lightning and Inspiration. This is organized by Barbara Sherman, and they'll feature both Barbara and Eileen Hoffman presenting on the topic. They're going to discuss the influence of the stories of Saint Barbara and Rapunzel on their artwork. As I said, we're a 501c3. If you'd like to make contributions, information is on our website. We have PayPal, and we have various ways that you can contribute. We also have art for sale. It's something new we've started about a month ago. It's a curated show of previous presenters. This show is organized by Geraldine Hanrahan, a board member, and the art is for sale. It both supports the artist and ATOA's ongoing efforts. If anybody would like to make a proposal or be part of a talk, you can reach out either to me or Jackie Ratta. The information, again, is on the website. You can send us information. We'll send you a form. The first quarter of 2022 is booked up, but this would be for going forward as well. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to introduce Barbara. I'll let Barbara actually introduce herself and her idea for this talk. And again, Barbara, thanks for doing this. It is work to put together a talk. It's quite a lot more work than it looks like. And I just want to remind everybody, we can hear you, so you might want to mute yourself. And of course, our format is you can use the chat to ask any questions you like, to make any comments you like, but also feel free along the way to unmute yourself and jump in with a thought or a question. This way we keep the dialogue sort of active and spontaneous. So welcome, Barbara. Before I say that, I do want to recognize Roberta Bernardi. She's a board member, and Fran Beeler. We have two board members. And I want to say it's so nice to see so many familiar faces and also so many new faces at this meeting tonight and at the talk. So thank you all for coming. Barbara, welcome.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you for tonight, and thank you for Art at First. This is really a wonderful thing for artists. Here we're talking about somebody who was locked in a tower, and it's almost 2 years that we've been locked, not in a tower, but we've been in lockdown. So we're looking for ways to connect, and you've provided a wonderful one. So thank you very much. Can we do a screen share?
Yes, just go ahead, click the green button, and first have what you want open on your desktop.
Okay. Where's the green button?
So
Bottom of your screen.
The screen share at the bottom
Screen
center.
share. Why am I not seeing? Oh, I know. I see. There it is. Sorry, everybody. Share and slideshow. Okay, here it is.
there you go.
Okay, lightning and inspiration. I first want to assure you all this is not going to be churchy, even though we're talking about a saint. in my blog, Seeking the Sublime in the Everyday, I look for things that lift us up and connect us. So that's what Barbara has shown me. I mean, every time I mention Barbara, there's something else really interesting that kind of connects with a whole nother part of the world. So just as Barbara locked in her tower had a questing spirit, there's a whole lot of art that Barbara inspired that has inspired me. And I've been having a great time searching for Barbara on the internet and finding these things to steal, not to put too fine a point on it, but I will be stealing with them and putting them into my own work. So now about, and another one of the nice things that Barbara connected me with was Eileen Hoffman. I was just telling her about Barbara and she reminded me about Rapunzel. Rapunzel comes directly from the Barbara story. So thank you, Eileen. Hi, Eileen.
I
Now
just
let's
want
go on.
to say, actually, I just said I was working on this Rapunzel series and you said to me, oh, that's Saint Barbara.
I did?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. It turned out great. It turned out great. So here's Barbara's story. Wait a minute, I skipped one. There's a missing. I'm sorry. Here she is. Oh, that's what I skipped there. There are two churches of Saint Barbara here in New York City. This is Saint Barbara's Catholic Church in Bushwick on Bleecker Street in Bushwick. And this is Saint Barbara's Greek Orthodox Church in Chinatown. And I'm really excited about drawing this facade here. So here is Barbara's story. The beautiful daughter of a wealthy pagan in the 3rd century Turkey. Her father locked her in an attic, in a tower, to, I guess, just to practice his authority and keep her under his thumb. But she had a questing spirit and she reached out even from the tower. I love this picture. I think she looks like she's hailing a cab. But she somehow, she asked for people to bring her books. And some of the books she got were Bibles, I think, or she learned about this new religion, Christianity. And she arranged for a priest to be brought to the tower. She told her father she was ill. And the priest disguised himself as a doctor and went up there and he taught her and he baptized her. So she was a Christian, and then her father found out and he was really furious and he handed her over to the authorities. And they tortured her. They would torture her every day and throw her into a cell at night thinking that she would die of her wounds, and every night her wounds were healed and every morning she woke up fully healthy and smiling. But so then he took matters into his own hands and he said, if you don't give this up, that's it, I'm going to behead you. And she said, no, Dad, you can't do that to me. I'm not doing what you say. Do whatever you want. And he did behead her. And I thought about not showing these pictures because they're kind of grisly. And then I remembered that we all really like watching scary movies. And these pictures in the 15th century were kind of what they had as opposed to a Stephen King movie or novel. And we all enjoy that shiver of fear. And these artists did that. Created it, provided it, and then they were able to say it was something holy. So Daddy cuts off her head, and the moment she dies, he is struck by lightning. And this is the first finished piece of my project. This is a photograph by Gary Hirshhorn, I found his work on the internet. I think Gwyneth Leach had posted something of his pictures. And I reached out to him on Instagram and said, dear Gary Hirshhorn, I really admire your work and I would like to incorporate it into some of my work. And he said, sure, go ahead. I thought maybe I'll have to pay or anything. No, go ahead. So thank you very much, Gary Hirshhorn, and his, I recommend you go look at his work. It's really, really amazing. This is obviously my pen and ink drawing, and it's his lightning striking Lower Manhattan.
Barbara,
So
Barbara, Jenna Lash asked, what church did Saint Barbara belong to before she converted?
her father was a pagan. I'll get to that. I don't know if I don't know that she had a church. I think, I don't know. But I am going to talk about that a little bit. So here we go. Daddy is struck by lightning. Barbara goes to heaven and she becomes the patron saint of, I have it written down. Sorry. She's the patron saint of engineers, architects, geologists, stonemasons, miners, and artillerymen, and anyone who's about to be struck by lightning. So if you find yourself in that situation, she's your girl. You just pray to Barbara. We actually have a good friend who built a house in East Hampton and moved in, was all ready to move in and spend the night. And she just said, maybe I'll go back to the city and come out next week. That night, the house was struck by lightning and almost totally destroyed. And our friend Carol attributes the whim that sent her back to the city and saved her life. She attributes that to Saint Barbara. The other people who I don't know if they pray to Saint Barbara. The United States Marines, the 11th Regiment of the United States Marines, celebrate Saint Barbara's Day every December 4th with revelry and contests and Marine kind of celebrations. Also, the people who where is it? Oh, well, the people of the Afro-Cuban religion Santeria celebrates St. Barbara's Day on December 4th. They pray to Barbara for protection. So she has a wide reach. I want to go back for a minute and talk about the father. As Jenna asked what the religion was, he was a pagan, which is the first definition is someone who's not a Christian or Muslim or a Jew. But pagans believe that nature is sacred and that the natural cycles of birth, growth, and death observed in the world around us carry profoundly spiritual meanings. Well, I don't have any argument with that. Maybe I'm a pagan too. And I believe that in a story, if the villain is completely evil with no redeeming features, it's not really an interesting story. I think if we substituted this sword for a baseball bat, he could just be somebody's dad with a funny hat. So one of the things I'm thinking about drawing is, suppose Barbara and her father were able to sit down and talk things over. And I think I am going to do a drawing of Barbara and her father just working it on, and really to see it from the father's view. I think anybody whose daughter came to him and he said she wanted to join the Moonies, he might very well, maybe lock her in a room or try to talk her out of it. While of course, drawing the line at beheading her. So here are some more of my works. This is a finished work where Barbara is ensconced in the architecture. And this photograph is by my brother, Rob Swanson. This is Lightning over Lake Champlain, pen and ink and photograph. And here's Barbara. I guess this is after now she's a saint. And this one I'm very fond of because I think she looks like she's dancing. And I think that tower could be a cocktail shaker if really she were kind of a party girl. A lot of her pictures, a lot of the images of her, some of them are very, holy, but some of them are kind of lively too. This is still a work in progress. This is another Gary Hirshhorn where the lightning is actually striking the World Trade Center. Whoops, sorry. And those are the library lions. So this is a New York centric Saint Barbara tribute. That's there. And then these are some pieces that I haven't found homes for. These are works in progress. But this one actually, it does look like the head is loose because I spilled ink on the original head. And I've given her a new head, which, I didn't want to cut the head off or anything because that would be a little grisly. But she is getting a new head. And this is another one that I have to decide how I want to populate this piece. This is another funny story about things just appear that seem to make total sense in the Barbara story. This is a map that I bought in Istanbul 20 years ago that I just really love this little map, and I brought it home and framed it. And then here in the midst of the Barbara project, I realized it's from Turkey and Barbara's from Turkey. So I thought I'll make a nice frame for it and make it part of the Barbara project. But I need to know what these things say here. I don't want to put it in my art not knowing what it's saying in case it's something I wouldn't want to have. So where am I going to find somebody who reads Arabic? Well, I just mentioned it to my friend Bill Bice, who's here tonight. And Bill said, my cousin is an Arabic scholar. So there we go. So he sent a letter saying that he called it a lovable piece. It is taken from a page of a book, and a very old paper, but it is a modern piece, and it doesn't say anything. This artist just happened to like the way Arabic-ish letters look. So I don't have to worry about saying anything offensive to anybody, but that's a work in progress. It's coming along. Now we're going to talk about the Barbaras, because I have noticed, especially in the New York Artist Circle, there are a lot of Barbaras. And I've talked to some of them about maybe a Barbara project. So I did it myself. I sent out an email saying, calling all Barbaras. And then I put out, a questionnaire with these questions. Do you like your name? Were you named for someone? Do you have a nickname? Was Brian Wilson thinking of you when he wrote Barbara Ann? I didn't put in all the answers, but there's some wonderful answers. And I am going, as part of the Barbara project, I am going to be presenting a Barbara of the Day over the next weeks and months, where these Barbaras who responded have sent me their work, and I'm just going to put them in my post in Seeking the Sublime in the Everyday, and it'll be this Barbara, and I'll show anything she wants to say and anything she wants to show me. So now I have a cavalcade of Barbaras coming up. There are 8 Barbaras who responded, including Babs Reingold. And Babs, I somehow missed you, so you're part of it, and you'll be a Barbara of the Day as well. So here come the Barbaras. Oh, wait, I forgot one part. One of the questions was, how do you feel about this one, Barbie? And I have to say my feelings about her are not positive. That was my name. My name was Barbie. And I was just coming out of dolls and growing up. And I did not like, I'd introduce myself and somebody would say, oh, Barbie doll. Well, no, thank you. So it was fun for me to find these pictures of her in magazines and make collages. So I did. So I actually ended up playing with Barbies, which I never did as a child. I never bought my daughter a Barbie, and she came home from a play date. Her friend of hers, she came home from a play date, and the girls reported with real horror that Jessie didn't have any Barbies, but I think Jessie survived. So here comes the cavalcade of Barbaras. Here they come. Barbara Davis. Barbara is the executive pastor at First Presbyterian Church, but she also likes to draw. And we're putting the Barbaras, my friend Nick, who's here, is putting the names and the websites of these artists in the chat. So I hope you'll go and look at them, and you'll be hearing from them as the months go on, as Barbara of the Day.
Barbara, there's a great question in the chat. Deborah Ugaretz asked, what is it about the Barbara legend that strikes your fancy? Do you see her as a model for holding fast to your own beliefs?
Partly that, and partly, I was once, when I was about 20, I was deciding whether or not to go on a trip with this boyfriend who turned out to be a very bad boyfriend. And my mother reported to me that my father had said, tell her if she goes not to come back. And I really hadn't known whether I wanted to go or not. But what I said was, well, he can't talk to me like that. I'm going. So I do like that standing up for herself, no matter what he did. I also like the fact that even she was locked in a tower, and she still found a way to get out and how to make connections and how to learn something. So I hope that answers the question. This is Barbara Griffiths. And this is Barbara Hermore, who is an artist and photographer, but she saw this Santa Barbara and decided that she would pose as Barbara. This is Barbara Lubliner, a piece from a series titled Don't Shut Up. And Barbara Rachko, who does these gorgeous pastels on sandpaper. Barbara Schaefer, this is a street in Rome. And Barbara Slitkin, who said she's been working through the pandemic feeling like she was losing her head. So she felt that was kind of appropriate. And now I have my friend Ken Forbes, who is here. And of course, his name would be Ken, if we're talking about Barbie. Kenny and I went on a field trip to Saint Barbara in Bushwick, and he made a video. So here we're going to end up with a little video of Saint Barbara in Bushwick, and then my drawing of it. And that's it. Thank you very much for looking. This was made by Ken Forbes, who was here tonight. Maybe Kenny, you would say something and wave. There's Kenny.
Hi, y'all.
First,
Kenny.
first, we always like to applaud the artist.
Thank you.
Well done, Barbara.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you, Kenny. There's another Barbara here, and that's Babs Reingold. She's going to be a Barbara of the day too.
Regina Gradis says, really lovely, Barbara. I will say those early images that you showed, the historic ones, you know, yes, all that art is narrative and it speaks to a story, but at the same time, it's just beautiful to look at that kind of work, that kind of beautiful dramatic drawing and those figures. There's something very striking about early work from another era. Shall we proceed to Eileen Hoffman? Eileen, welcome.
Eileen.
Did you want to say any more, Barbara?
Nope, I've said it. The floor is yours, Eileen.
And Barbara, Barbara, you're coming in from New York City, or where are you coming in from?
I'm in Greenwich Village.
Okay, and Eileen, where are you coming from?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. That was great, Barbara. I'm going to share my screen, and I would also thank everyone for being here, and Barry for keeping this program going for almost 2 years. That you get one of those art OB pandemic awards that we're going to have to make up. But
we could have Saint Barry, I think.
What?
Saint Barry.
Saint Barry.
Saint Barry. Okay.
Well, that was really interesting to listen to, because I didn't grow up on any of that as a Jewish girl. But I'm going to show my work. Let me share the screen. And I have a big relationship to Saint Barbara, what her life was like. Okay. And there. Okay. So I'm going to give a quick early view of my development, which shows how I landed here. And as a child, I loved all crafts, pot holders, mosaics, beads, everything. I did it. And when I got to high school, I got very involved in doing textile crafts. And this was the second embroidery that I did from a kit. I taught myself how to do it. And after this, I did my own, and I did needlepoint, and I learned to knit, and I made this big bedspread of cable stitching that I taught myself, and I learned to weave and did a lot of weaving. And from doing all this intense work, I really got a deep appreciation of the textile arts, and a real appreciation for the time and the talent and the intelligence and the love that was poured into these projects. And I also really felt that they told stories that just, you know, all the mostly women who did this work had had lives, and their stories were being put into this work. And a lot of people who knit and weave talk about that, what gets communicated through the thread. So I learned that early, and I also feel because of this time spent, I have a very personal connection to materials and making things. And this was a sweater I knit, with cable stitching. I was crocheting. I was like nonstop. And another thing from this time that influences my work, So my parents met in Columbia Law School in the 40s. And my mother was really ahead of her time. She was really, she really had big ideas and wanted to do a lot in the world. And she faced a lot of sexism. And she ended up being the assistant dean at Rutgers Law School. So she was there when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was there. They were colleagues. And so she was modeling for me a different way that women could be in the world from what I saw, you know, with most of my friends' mothers. But at the same time, there was a big contradiction for what she expected from me. And I was just, you know, this pretty girl who had some talent and wasn't that nice. And I was going to marry well, and they didn't worry about me. So, and I kind of felt invisible and didn't think people were interested in what I had to say. And so it's just very interesting. Very early, I got this relationship and understanding of sexism that has stayed with me. So anyway, I went to college for textile. I went to Skidmore College. They had a textile program. This is something I made there that's knitted and macrame combined. And also I will add that this was what, you know, to date myself, in the 70s, this is before the textiles were popular. And it was hard to find a way to learn these things and do them. There weren't a lot of programs. But after that, I went to, I came to New York City and went to the Fashion Institute of Technology to learn textile design in a one-year program. And then I worked as a textile designer. And this is really where I learned to paint. And I just loved pattern. I was smitten and just always had patterns in my head. So that piece of it was, I think, important. However, I didn't want to be a textile designer. I always wanted to make my own work. So I went to graduate school and I went to Indiana University. This was an early tapestry I did there. I went there because they had a good program, supposedly, and I was running away again from my family because I had a boyfriend who was a lawyer that they really wanted me to marry, and I didn't want that life. That's just my final break. That's how I did it. But there, in one respect, I started finding my voice. I started using plastics. Many of you know my work. I still do. You know, I never stopped. I threaded the loom with monofilament and wove it with saran wrap, which actually takes some skill, those of you who know that. The other significant thing I think about being in this program at Indiana University, I didn't realize it's a very regimented program, and they had specific assignments that you had to do. And I was used to being on my own. I was very self-directed. I just wanted to do my own thing. And I really bucked it. And I fought really hard with the professors because I didn't want to do it. And like this piece was supposed to be for an assignment where you did something about stripes. They didn't take my first one. This is my second one that they begrudgingly took. So I wasn't, whatever. This was going on, and I got a studio in the sculpture department because that was much more interesting to me. And I learned to make things. And so this piece is very much, it takes up a lot of space, but it doesn't take up space, and it's pretty, but it's not pretty. And it's hard to see in this picture, but there's little bows sewn in it. I drill holes. So from here, I came back I knew I wanted to come back to New York, and got an apartment in Hoboken, moved to Hoboken. I met Rob out there, who's my husband, and many of you know him. This piece was done, it was in the Pier C before the piers got torn down. We had this really big show. I sewed the clear vinyl, the fluorescent pink vinyl. And so this piece also takes up a lot of space, but it doesn't. The things like that, I was flirting with that. Those were concepts that were interesting to me. But at this point, because I was so angry at what happened in the textile department, that I made two reactive decisions, which you make when you're young. The first was I didn't want anything to do with textiles. I just cut all of that out. I put all my things away. And I didn't want anything to do with university. So I didn't look for teaching jobs or adjunct jobs, for better or worse. So I was still using clear materials, but I had cut off a piece of who I am. But this is alcohol paints on plexiglass. I did a bunch of pieces where I cut the forms out and then painted them. And my work, I don't consider myself a conceptual artist, but my work has always been personal about me. So it's about my, who I am, which is what I why I wanted to explain that story. And there's a little, I reply. So anyway, so I did a bunch of stuff with plexiglass. This is layered, layers of plexiglass. And I will say also, after watching Barbara's presentation, which I loved, all of that Christian art did not, I was not fed by painting and all of that art. It was textile work, and that really fed my imagination. So I think that shows in this. Is the Moorish Andalusian art really influenced me, and I feel like that fed me more.
Eileen, there are a few questions I want to read off.
Okay.
Deborah Ugaret says, did you study artists like Linda Benglis and Eva Hess?
Oh, yes. Eva Hess was one of my early, loves, of course. Yeah.
Jenna Lash says she's so enjoying hearing more about you, Eileen, and learning about the history of your work. I do want to ask, do you regret, Eileen, that you went away from working in textiles?
I'm going to get back to that.
Okay.
It was not the best decision, but I was a young person without much, what can I say? I would say the two artists when I was young, three who really was Eva Hess, Martha Graham, and Kandinsky. I was also dancing. I did a lot of dance. I would have loved, that was my second love. So I did a lot of works on paper because I just felt that something wasn't focused about my ideas. So I spent a couple of years working on paper. And now I realize what it was the textiles was missing, but the relationship is there. Then I felt, okay, I need to commit to painting and to develop this work. So I stretched some well, I first tried to work on canvas, which I never wanted to do, but so I dropped that and stretched the canvas on masonite and painted. And then there's a piece of thin chiffon sewn on top of this. And as soon as I put that there and sewed it on, that was when textiles came back. So this piece was, I feel like a watershed piece. And what also made this work possible was I developed the Art Guerrera paint because I could mix it with the thinnest medium. And then it was like watercolors, because I really love watercolors. I never loved oil paint. So I did more of that, and like these pieces, now you see there's embroidery and there's writing and draping and pattern, like it's all the things I've been interested are coming together, and there's not a specific shape it has to be. So I did a whole lot of, did this work, and then I wanted to take the fabric and make it into a spiral and a circle. That's what I really wanted to do, big circles and spirals, and I couldn't figure out the right way to do that. I didn't want it to sew it like a rag rug. And I picked up these pipe cleaners. I think they were my son's because he was young. And I made these loom-like things, and I loved it. It just was right. And I did some more, but the colors are limited that they come in. It's a very limited palette. So I figured out to stain them with the Art Guerrera paint, watered down, that I had been using. And that opened up it just opened that whole idea up for me. So I did a lot of pieces with the chenille stems, and so I wanted the pink circle, and it's beautiful, but it's edgy. And the tying together of the stems makes, that barb knot, and I cut them in half, so there had to be more knots. And this was a larger piece. The pieces were getting larger, the circles were getting larger and larger. And I felt like I was outgrowing the sculpture, the structure of the craft stems and what made sense. So I moved on to doing more pieces like this that were a little more like installations and had a lot of pieces instead of one big one. The plastic is clear drop cloth, and the pink stripe is knitted. I cut the drop cloth and made my own yarn, and there's a lot of that all over my, in my pieces. So my knitting skills were coming back. I feel like now I'm like, using the full array of what I had. And this piece was very satisfying because it's larger and it has the pattern in the background and writing and knitting, and it just combines everything. And at this point, right when it was around, this piece was finished, I went to an opening, and there were installations there, and one of them had a big piece of plastic hanging with, and there was painting on it, and it was sewn. And I looked at it and I was like, this is what I want to do. What is this material? And it turned out it was Duralar, which is an archival vinyl, and it takes the paint really beautifully. So I got a pad of it, and it was like I was home. I, been painting like mad on this Duralar since I found it. So
Eileen, let me read a few comments.
Okay.
Regina Gradis says, so creative and varied. Alyssa Pritzka says, Eileen, your current art speaks to me. Thanks for your presentation with such honesty. Fran Beeler says, it's great to hear more about your background. You came full circle, and here come the circles. Barbara Sherman says, so inventive. Babs Reingold. I love hearing about your early background, and I remember the 1990s and your work. I love the studios we all had in Hoboken. There's a consistent thread through all of your work. Good use of the word thread there. Elaine Forrest, the work is so varied and extremely developed in each phase of your career. Brilliant, joyful, and personal. Wonderful, Eileen. Deborah Ugaris asked if you could do some close-ups. I'm not so sure you're able to do that on this program. Archie St. George says the color pink is ever present in your journey. Good notice there, Archie. Norma Greenwood says, wonderful presentation. Love the insight into your work. So very nice. I would ask you, Eileen, have you ever lit your works to work with light going through the plastic?
I haven't done a lot of that. I know there's a lot with the shadows, and I've seen a lot of other people who do that, and of course I love it, but I haven't found, I don't know, it hasn't gone there yet.
You're still young.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know my room growing up was pink. So that was partially, you know, I got really sick of it. And then I got that wallpaper that was behind, I don't know if anyone remembers, the first knitted bedspread, which also I feel resonates in some of this work. Anyway, so yeah. So these are demonstrator bags inspired from the artist, the Women's Walk on Washington in 2017, which was thrilling to be part of. And you see all the different pieces. There's knitting and, you know, there's all kinds of things in them. Here I did it, here's a large one. This was for Art in Odd Places. That was a great project. And this piece has writing in it, has a lot of writing in it. So what people always ask me about that. So the writing in that is from a journal, one of my journals when I was in my 20s, and it's about feeling invisible and unseen. And it just really struck me as very poignant in expressing that time in my life. And I know a lot of us have journals, and when we look back at them and we're kind of mortified because there's pages of angst, and you're like, oh, you know, but what I just love about it is the visualness of it, and just the writing on the page really is compelling to me. So that's also part of it. And also it's like a thread. So it's, you know, it's the stories that were woven into things. So it's all of those things for me. So there is and I purposely make it hard to read. I don't, partly maybe because I'm self-conscious, but also it's not really about the story. I'm not a writer per se. And this is my work table. I use golden acrylic paints, the liquid paints in those little, and I either use a brush or those markers, kind of like pen and ink, so I can mix colors together. Here's just a mixture of, you know, me painting lines, me writing, sewing. And this piece, The Stories Remain, installation, contains it sort of contains everything. And I love doing installations. And I mean, the challenging part about them is that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, but each part has to be really strong and hold and stand on its own. So there's a lot of variety of the ways I was experimenting with the Duralar. And I like the pattern in the background. And I always felt that wallpaper also held the stories in the room. So I want to say now about Rapunzel, because I haven't talked about Rapunzel yet. I grew up on the Brother Grimm stories, and there's Rapunzel, there's Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Hansel and Gretel, and they're all in certain ways compelling stories. But the Rapunzel one always stayed with me, and I think because it's very much, a little bit of the fight of my childhood, which was, alone in my room making things and fighting to get out into the world and do more and be seen. And I saw a Brothers Grimm's movie when I was in 3rd grade, and I remember loving it. And we did a home mural, and those stories have been made a little nauseating by Hollywood and Disney. And in there, it becomes all about, if you're a woman, a girl, you have to be saved, and you need your prince to come and save you. And it's kind of a nauseating message. But I think separate from that, the stories speak a lot to the invisible struggles of sexism that girls fight. And that's very much in my work and what a lot of my work is about. So I saw in my head, and I just always love also not just the story, but the visualness of this big long tower and this gorgeous piece of hair textile coming down. It's just all very, it's kind of compelling. So I started doing these paintings. I wanted a big, long painting, but I didn't want it just to be one piece. I wanted to make the surface more interesting, which was why I cut them up and sew them together. And also the sewing adds an edge to it. And it's like a barbed wire. And I wanted them to be very beautiful, but then not edgy. That's what I've always been flirting with in my work. So this one, it's like she's letting down her basket of hope. And this one to me is more hopeful. This is that to me is like her bag of angst and anger about the whole situation. And I also will say that I don't know how to say this. I don't plan these out a lot. I mean, I start painting. It's kind of like music and a tone. You're like, oh, you need the next rung to be thinner or wider, or this color or that color. And also, I think you see a lot. Also, what you see in here is the twill pattern that's from weaving, and that pattern that goes back to my weaving days, because I was learned to draft and do all of that stuff, and always loved those patterns. Pulls that together. This one, this is not the tower down. It's very obvious. It's the wrecking ball. So it's this beautiful edgy ball of chenille. And this one, this is my iPhone photography. It's just finished. I might have to get it photographed. Is looking through the window, sort of wistfully out, and that's why I wanted lots of thin lines like barbed wire.
I do want to read a few comments. Everybody's really appreciative of both what you and Barbara are presenting. Sandra Indig says, thank you, Barbara and Eileen. Wonderful presentations. Lothorial Badenhausen says, tonight is pure candy with both you and your work and history. Sandra Indig says very personal and heartfelt plus powerful images. And Priscilla Stadler says your connecting thread with story is such a wonderful weaving together. Wendy List says, I like that you make decisions as you go along, responding to what's in front of you.
Yeah, I always find that if you plan it out ahead, it's dead. You know, you need a sketch, and so you can, because it's never what you see in your head. It's never what you draw. It's like, that's a drawing. But I think most of us have learned that the hard way. Well, this one is knitting her blanket, because I was imagine what, you know, what is something else. She's alone in up there and she's cold. And that's why I have that, you know, it's so much the twill pattern. And then this reminds me, because there I was, I knit my big blanket. So there's other things that aren't ready to be shown that I'm working on. And this is what's behind the wall. I have this pile of stuff of things I make that I pull from that get put into these things. It's like, you know, that's another way I work. This is what I have to show you. Thank you.
I have a question, if I.
Sure, Deborah.
Yeah. Eileen, have you thought of sort of pushing the mixture of the barbed wire and the very feminine and soft work that you do with the color and the textile? Have you thought of sort of combining the two?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, you use your chenille pipe cleaners as sort of reference to being barbed wire and sort of pointy and a little bit sharp, and I was wondering if you have thought of really going with barbed wire and combining it with the other materials, with the soft materials that you use.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know I have been resisting it. I've been resisting going to welding, and there's something, I don't know, that I'm resisting. So
do you ever feel like you want to have that juxtaposition or that dichotomy of really of wire and sharpness with the softness of your work? Maybe it's just not there.
yeah, it's not there. A lot. I mean, there's lots of ways, and maybe I will think about it where if I were to start welding, it would open something up. But there's something about it that just keeps me from going there. So, and I'm also very careful about the materials I use, because I want to make reference to all this textiles, but I don't want to actually use those materials in that way, because I wanted to transcend that world and not be in that world. You know, that's why, like, I don't use, when I was working with fabric, I never used high quality fabrics or really good yarn, because that's a sweater. You know, I just use cheap yarn. So, but yeah.
Something to think about, I guess.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you both for wonderful presentations. It's always great to get the background story. And I will confess, I've known Eileen for a very long time. So we had studios in the Hoboken building, though she was in a separate part. So I got to watch some of her process over the 90s. And it was fascinating when you first started working with those pipe cleaners. I remember when you first began those. But I wanted to just ask a little bit about this Duralar, and because I find, you know, hanging things fascinating, and I'm also working with bags. It's so interesting that you're working with these bags, and I want to know a little bit more about the significance of the bags and the items that were in the bags, and a couple of them where you showed that. And are the bags also made out of the Duralar? And
Yes.
they are, okay. And that is, and how heavy is that plastic, this Duralar that you're
Oh,
working
no,
with?
it's not it comes in different thicknesses. This is a thinner piece, but, oh yeah, it comes
Comes in rolls at different weights?
yeah, it comes in different weights. It's not that thick, yeah.
Okay, and is it completely clear, or does it have a, because without the details or having.
No, it's
seen-
completely clear. You can buy frosted, but they make a frosted version, but it's also completely clear.
Mhm, yeah,
They have
and it's
pads.
interesting seeing the pattern from both sides too.
Yes,
There's something very lovely about that. You get a whole different dimension when you're doing the pattern from both sides. And do you ever switch them around when you're working on one side? And do you do that, or is there always a front side and a back side?
I think I make it so all sides are strong, even though they're still, I guess, because also it's in my studio, oriented to the wall, but I make it there, all sides are strong. When it was hung, the one piece was, I mean, in this last year, I've gotten to see 2 of them in exhibitions, which has been great after the pandemic. And the one that was up in the barrio and the women celebrating women, those of you who got to see it, it was hanging against the clear window, and that was wonderful. I love that.
Yeah, a la Barry's question about light. That's an interesting thing to think about.
I've done other things in the past that I haven't shown with shadows, so it is something there, and I've taken videos of the shadows, but I think I would do that in an installation, but I don't see like the piece is about, you know what it is, because I want to be seen. I don't want it to, I'm trying to make the invisible visible, so I don't want it just to be shadows. Maybe
Eileen, I have a question now that
Yes.
you mentioned installations. I was really taken by your installation, like a long strips. Do you have a plan?
Oh, no.
What is the sequence of your installation like this? Or you do it spontaneously in the place that you install in the space?
Well, no, okay, if I'm going to install it in a place, I'm going to have it planned beforehand. I would think so. Yeah, I'm not that confident yet, but when I make them, I'm making things, and you see it's around my studio, and it's just trying, well, what does this need? What is this? It's just like that. I have a piece back there that I made. I wanted to make, it doesn't, and one day it will be in an installation, I know. Like that's kind of how it.
Well, I don't think there is lack of confidence, different ways of working. I mean, if you start installing in your studio, you have like a melody, a coordination, a story that the pieces will tell. But I didn't know if you have a plan previous, or you answer my question.
Yeah, I like that one I did in my studio, and I got it photographed in my studio, even though it's not the best place. But when I took it down, I made a blueprint of like where all the things were in the ceiling. So I could, if it was ever hung again, I could redo it.
Yeah, those pieces have
Yeah.
a great conversation together. So I just wanted,
Yeah.
I was curious.
So
Thank you.
Eileen,
I had a quick comment. Oh, it's Lois now. My quick comment was when I saw the things you were showing on 28th Street recently, Barry was talking about using light with your things. They seem to pick up the light. They seem to glow all on their own.
Yeah, they were nicely lit, and there was a shadow behind them that became part of it. Yeah.
great.
But I guess I would be good to think about actually being in charge of that and planning it.
Yes.
That was, those were, yeah.
So So Eileen, a sequential comment or question is, wouldn't it be interesting to then go to site-specific places or design for an installation or a commission? Because the challenge would then be a new environment, like, of course,
Yeah.
take into consideration the requirements of a site or people asking you to do it, where you're applying your own internal ideas and vision, but working with us with another place. I think that's another good step.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that both, Barbara and you, they have a commonality of that kind of detail. I just wanted to I think that together you have that detail-oriented work, and I think that works really well.
Thanks.
I saw a question, Regina, you had your hand up, and then was it Walter or Mark? One of you I know had a question, but go ahead, Regina.
Well, I want to thank Barry and Barbara and Eileen. This has been fascinating. And Eileen, since you shared some of your family history with us, are there any comments from your parents about your profession? And what about your children?
Well, my parents aren't alive anymore. Sorry to say.
But it's obvious she had Jewish parents, so there were a lot of comments along the way.
Thank you. Yeah, until I was like 30, they were trying to still mold me back into the other thing. I was fighting with them, and I think when people say, "How'd you do it?" and I say, I just wore them down, and then they, they're proud of what I did. They're proud of it.
And what about your son? Has he become a lawyer?
Oh God, he's just, that would be funny. I don't think that's what he'll do, but no, he's a freshman in college. So, so he knows. But he was an athlete. So that was like not my background. So that, took me off to back him.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I also wanted to just say, I wanted to thank Barbara Sherman for reaching out and including me in the project. And I owed her a couple of slides and I didn't get them to her because I just got immersed in the holidays with family, and then I have some deadlines this week, and but I'm going to get them to her.
I told her right away when she started this, oh, you have to get Babs.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did.
Well,
So
I loved having, we had a whole long conversation about the whole Barbie thing. And which is like every Barbara, their shekels go up, it's like Barbie. It's like, oh,
Yeah, it was not fun to have your name taken over by a plastic tart.
Now that maybe we have a few minutes, but what are you working on, Eileen and Barbara? What is your current project in the studio?
I'm working on finishing that picture that you saw in the video. And I have a couple of, I currently am working on a frame for that map of the world. And as I said, I want to do a picture of Barbara and her father. I want to find some, common ground for them. I often like, if there's a movie or something that I really love, I often like take the plot to the next step and wonder how they ended up. And sometimes I think if she'd only done this one thing, things would have turned out differently. So I might be rewriting the story. One of the Barbaras sent me a beautiful photograph of Santa Barbara, Iglesia de Santa Barbara in Rome. that's a very small church in a little plaza. And I have a picture of the two of them sitting on a little table having a cappuccino.
Mhm. Great. And you,
And I
Eileen?
have to say, Eileen, my reaction was exactly like yours. It's like, well, I'm Jewish, so I don't have this Saint Barbara history info, but was also a lover of Rapunzel and with sewing and thread and just all of that work that it takes to create an object when you're doing a process over and over and over again. The work also has your work has that meditation quality to it as well. With the pattern and the sewing, they really are a very combined unit.
Thanks.
I love that.
So Eileen,
Sorry,
what are
I
you
love that.
doing now?
I love, can you hear me? I
Yeah.
love that that Barbara kind of selected Eileen as kind of an honorary Barbara because of your work doing the Rapunzel series. So Alyssa had asked what you're working on now, and I wonder if are you going to be doing more of the Rapunzel pieces, or are you moving into other areas as well?
I don't think I'm ready to let go of that topic at all. I mean, I feel in a way most of my work on Duralars really fits in the Rapunzel. I'm kind of feeling like I've done all these big pieces and I want to do something smaller. And what I'm working on, I'm kind of nervous to say because whatever, but Fran and I did one of the USPS projects together, and she put one of her beautiful drawings in my pocketbooks, and I really like the combination of drawing. So I was trying to figure out how to do that with me drawing, and I remembered when I was in high school, I used to draw and paint with my makeup, like princesses. So I've been doing that, and I'm kind of combining them with the patterns behind them and sort of being visible and invisible. So we'll see where I'm not ready to show that work yet.
But kind of like that last piece you showed, I really like that with the bag behind the pattern. You just barely see it through all that.
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but
I'm going to read a few of the comments because there were so many. Peter Carazaglio says a magical jumble. He's referring to your pile that you draw from. And we have seen artists in the past, I believe it was maybe Walter Brown and other artists, where they have objects that they've made or collected just as collage people do. And then they're able to draw from that to make their work. Karen Bruckner says, thanks, Eileen, for sharing what's behind the wall. Cheryl Aiden, Eileen, I'm fascinated by your work. It's just lovely. And I loved hearing about your development as a woman and as an artist. Bab Slitnick, thank you, Barbara Sherman and Eileen Hoffman. Very interesting, great. Archie St. George makes an interesting point. It was mentioned about welding, and he points out welding would be loaded with a whole nother language. And that's very true. It's not like just going from acrylic to watercolor, which is a big jump. But if you start to go to welding, it really is another animal. Good point, Archie. Jeffrey Stein, thank you, Barbara and Eileen. Great presentations. Fran Beeler, a board member of ATOA, thank you, Barbara and Eileen. Thank you for sharing your thoughtful and intriguing processes. It's a pleasure to hear you both. Wonderful work, great presentations. And I'll point out, somebody mentioned, I've known you for a long time, but you can know an artist, but you really don't know them until they spend 30 minutes and they talk about their art. And if you notice, there were some really good questions that had the participants, both Barbara and Eileen, explain and reveal something from their youth that really seems to carry through in their art. And it's those stories that are often very deep. Bill Buse says, Barbara and Eileen, I have thoroughly enjoyed these fascinating presentations and the works representing your creative endeavors. Thanks for inviting me. And Peter Carol Zaglio, Barbara and Eileen, I am in awe of the freedom in your minds and the discipline in your works of art. And that's an interesting contrast between freedom and discipline. Thank you for inviting me. Lois Bender points out, it's all what's in a name. And Lothoriel Badenhausen says, how do you both feel about Rapunzel and Saint Barbara? Are or were they both white? Of course, Grimm was Germanic, so that makes sense. Are they relevant?
I don't think Barbara was white. Well, Turkey, the Middle East, a pagan. No, I don't think she was white. I don't.
Okay.
Rapunzel, yeah, that was a German. Well,
You know, I want to point out
an interesting question.
one of the nicest things tonight, besides deep presentations by both of you, at the end when we went to dialogue, you notice we didn't talk over each other. Everybody who wanted to spoke. That's not easy to do in a group of 37. That's not easy to do with 4 people at a dinner party. So that was very nice the way we sort of worked as a community. And I also noticed as I watched the screen, everybody was listening. You know, I think most things can be learned by listening, and to see everybody sort of peer in with open ears, that's a lot about what life's about. I do want to point out, Eileen, you mentioned you're not a conceptual artist. I challenge anybody here to make a work of art that has no concept behind it without having a full frontal lobotomy. And my point is, everything you do, your choices of materials and what you're going to make and your colors, you could say, you know, you can act like it's free association, but there really is a concept. I understand your point, but the fact that you actually wove words in and you wanted the words not to be readable, you know, I'm just trying to make the point. It's very hard not to be conceptual. This is an odd point I want to make. You were in Hoboken early, and I've seen artists in the South Bronx in that neighborhood early. We all know as artists, it's really hard to make a living, but somehow we know where the real estate is going to appreciate. And I know most of us are not 21 here, but it is a point to sort of, to the young artists that may listen to this one day, to yes, you're probably struggling and it's hard to sell your art, but buy property wherever you are. It seems like the way to go. And I do know some artists who did that 40, 50 years ago, and they're millionaires as a result of it. So artists do sort of have that insight.
I would suggest that the property becomes valuable because the artists are there, because the artists go there first, and that's what attracts everybody else. That's what sends the property value up. That's what happened with Hudson Yards. That land was fallow for 50 years. Nobody wanted it. The buildings were abandoned. The owners just wrote them off. Giant factory buildings. The High Line itself was sold for $20 at one point by Penn Railroad. And it was only because 2 artists wound up raising $1 million to dress up 2 blocks of it in front of, I've forgotten who, a fashion designer's office, which looked out on these 2 blocks, that all of a sudden it was suddenly valuable. And that's when.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, Diane Furstenberg.
Yep, and almost as soon as they finished, or just before they finished, a developer came along and bought the land on both sides of that work and built the Standard Hotel on top of the work. So yes, it's probably a good idea to, but of course none of us, I certainly couldn't have afforded to buy anything at the time that I came into this neighborhood, which is where we're right next to a Hudson Yards, and apparently it's going to be next. This is going to be the next Hudson Yards, so we're apparently going to get all evicted.
Well, the thing about being in Hoboken and Jersey City when I was, you know, it was also a community. You know, that was really what was exciting. And every person you read, you know, says about being an artist, is making your community. So that was a big piece of it. And also it really was a different economic time. you could work part-time and make a decent living. You know, it was very different economic times.
Well, yeah, and I too started in Jersey City. That's how Eileen and I met, was in Jersey City. And the Hoboken spaces at that time, though, the studio was there, but we did buy a brownstone in Jersey City, and yes, we did quite well afterward. But and Eileen went another route, but it is interesting because those studios in Hoboken were, I mean, the prices were unbelievable at the time. But on the flip side, you couldn't get people to come over to Hoboken or Jersey City. It was
Right.
as if it was in some foreign land. I mean, it was bizarre. Oh my God, I have to like take the PATH train to come over here. And now you can't touch a studio or a brownstone in Jersey City or Hoboken. So it is fascinating how that works. Every time the artists come in, they gentrify, as you mentioned. But yeah, and it was a great community there. It worked out well.
Good point. Thanks for fleshing that out, Lawrence, and for going into detail, Babs. Another point I want to make, Eileen, you spoke about sexism in the arts. You know, ran very deep, even as far as majors. Women were channeled to certain majors and not to other majors, whether it was MFA or BFA programs across the country. So there's a lot of that went on. It's changed now to a large extent, but certainly back in the 70s, 80s, even 90s, and maybe 2000s, no question about it. I want to say this is ATOA. Before I conclude, I do want to ask Alyssa Pritzker, who has organized a talk that's next Monday. Alyssa, would you just give a brief introduction to what your talk is about? And by the way, everybody, it's every Monday, 6 o'clock. When Alyssa finishes, I'll give a little brief conclusion. Go ahead. I'm going to ask you to unmute, Alyssa.
Thank you for the unmute. It's going back and forth. Well, thank you for the opportunity to invite everybody to come and listen to the International Society of Antiquaries, the ISA. We are a group that it was not formed by myself, but I'm part of it. And we'll talk about our group, how the group was formed and what the group is all about. International Society of Antiquaries, and we are 5 members, and we are a multidisciplinary group. So thank you for the opportunity. I hope everybody comes, and I hope everybody has a lot of good questions like tonight, okay?
Very nice. I look forward to it, Alyssa. Again, thanks.
Barry,
Yes, of course, Lois, go ahead.
I'd like to just pipe in and say that in 2 weeks, we're going to have a panel discussion about the cosmos in honor of the winter solstice. So 6 panelists, artists you may know or not know, whose work is about the heavens and beautiful work with the nature of the cosmos. So thank you. 2 weeks when we have the winter solstice.
By the way, we continue 6 to 7:30, right?
Yes, so we're 6 o'clock start for the rest of 2021. It's the same Zoom link. We will have a new time come 2022, and we will have a new Zoom link. Everything will be on our website. We're ATOA, Artists Talk on Art. If you'd like to contribute, there's information on our website. If you want to see what's to come, you could look under calendar. If you want to see a previous talk, it's on our YouTube channel. This talk will be on our YouTube channel in a day or two. And as well, our archives are held with the American Archives of Art, or at the Smithsonian Institute. And there is a link on our website, and you can see talks that happened in 1980 or 1985. It was really nice to see us come together as a group, as we always do. This is our 83rd meeting like this, and it shows you things build with time. You know, it's just like each artist spoke a little deeper about themselves and revealed stories from their past. us as a group or as a clan or as a hive of sorts, we have sort of come together, even with new people in as we get at every talk, and even with our sort of solid regulars. So I want to thank everybody here and, encourage you to keep coming, keep joining us. Keep in mind, if you want to present an idea, you can reach out to me, or there's information. Jackie Sferrarata's email is on the website, and we'll send you the form for you to fill out for something you'd like to present. So once again, thanks so much, everybody. This was great. Claps and snaps to all of you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, everyone, for.
Thank you for coming,
Thanks,
everybody.
Barbara. Thanks, Eileen. Beautiful.
Thank
talk.
you.
Thank you,
Really
Eileen.
good.
You're a great partner.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah,
It was really fun.
yeah.
Both were great.
It was a great presentation, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Well done, guys.
See everybody.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Hi, Norma.
Yeah, hi.